So I still remember the exact spot on the highway where I was driving. I think I remember it so vividly because I was having one of the most important conversations that I'd ever had with myself. In that moment, in my car, I knew in my bones I wouldn't drink alcohol again. So you might be thinking, what was the rock bottom that brought me to that point? And the answer is, there wasn't one. You see, I was a gray area drinker, and I drank between two extremes. I wasn't an end-stage, lose-everything kind of drinker, not by a long shot. If you would have asked my friends and family if they thought I had a drinking problem, they would have said, of course not. But I also wasn't an every now and again drinker who would have a glass of champagne, for example, at a wedding, and then not drink again for weeks. I didn't fall into either one of those drinking categories or drinking extremes, and maybe you can identify. As a nutritionist who has worked in corporate wellness since 2004, I functioned really well. I knew how to eat well, I worked out on a regular basis, and I loved to read and study everything health and wellness. But what people didn't know was how much I loved the off switch that wine provided to my on and often anxious brain. I loved the immediate effect that red wine delivered. And people also didn't see how easy and frequent it was for one glass of wine to turn into one bottle of wine. There's a common characteristic and pattern in gray area drinking that I experienced and I've watched many others experience as well, and that's a stopping and restarting drinking. One time I stopped for 7 months, another time I stopped for 30 days, and other short periods in between, and then I would think to myself, why am I being so restrictive? I can be a social drinker. So I'd return to drinking, only to return to a level of drinking that I regretted. This back and forth drinking merry-go-round was the exact thing that I knew I wanted to exit off of for good that day in my car on the highway. And maybe you actually don't identify with gray area drinking because not everyone will. But here's what I know with absolute certainty. There are people in your life right now, could be family members, close friends, colleagues, and they're worrying and wondering as they're rethinking their drinking because they are in the gray area. But more than likely, they're not talking to you about it. And they're not talking to others about it because they think they're the only ones and they think they're alone. So how do I know this? I lived this for many years. And the more I've been speaking out professionally about my gray area drinking experience, the more my email inbox is flooded with emails from attorneys and therapists, senior level managers and nurses, stay-at-home moms, yoga instructors, and many, many others. And their words are different, but the gist of what they write to me is all the same. And they say, I identify with your drinking story. I don't have a rock bottom either. I want to be able to drink socially, but I end up regretting how much I drink on a frequent basis. This gray area drinking spectrum is real, and it's large. And there are a lot of high-achieving, high-functioning people who silently live here every day. But beyond gray area drinking is even something bigger, and that's a collective story of anxiety. And this, I believe, is where we are collectively missing the mark. We don't need any more cognitive hoops to jump through, and we don't need any more ways to focus our willpower and contort our willpower in an attempt to fix ourselves. What we need is practical training in how to nourish our nervous system in a revolutionary and new way. So there's many components and pieces to this, but one component and one interesting place to start can be understanding your neurotransmitters. So let's start with GABA. So GABA is the natural anti-anxiety neurotransmitter. And when GABA is low, we can feel anxious, and our mind can get stuck in a loop of worry, rumination, or obsession about anything. Serotonin is the natural antidepressant neurotransmitter. When serotonin's low, we can feel more depressed, unhappy, and crave things like carbs and alcohol and have trouble sleeping. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that's in charge of our focus and motivation. When dopamine's low, it can be hard to stay the course and stay on track with your goals and your routines. So people with low GABA will often say they drink as a way to relax. That was me. People with low serotonin will say they drink as a way to have fun. And people with low dopamine will say they drink as a way to connect and engage with others. But here's the problem, and here's what I want you to know and take from this talk. It can be relatively easy for most people on the gray area drinking spectrum to stop drinking. But it can be hard to stay stopped, especially if we're not replenishing our neurotransmitters and nourishing our nervous system in a comprehensive and consistent way. So here's the good news. It turns out there's actually specific foods, movements, and lifestyle practices that, while they're great wellness tips for everyone, they have very direct and immediate roles in boosting all of our neurotransmitters. So, as a way to give you some practical ways that you can begin to boost your neurotransmitters now, I'd like to start by doing that by using the acronym NOURISH. So N, notice nature. Research shows that when our pleasure, which is dopamine, and our happiness, which is serotonin, both begin to rise when we go into areas with a large density of trees or a large body of water, like an ocean. All it takes is 20 minutes of being around nature with a lot of trees, a lot of water, for your GABA, serotonin, and dopamine to begin to rise. Observe your breath. There are many medications that can stunt, blunt, and block the fight, flight, freeze response in your body. There are no medications that can boost the calm response. But there's one mechanism in your body that can do that naturally. And that mechanism is your breath. When our breath is regulated, our neurotransmitters become regulated. Take a breath. How did that feel? You all just gave a little boost to your GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. Uniting with others. The research is solid. Close social bonds, community, and social connections have a direct impact on our nervous system. In our technology-driven world, we've become very deficient of human touch. Hug the people who support you. Hug your pets. Get body work, massage, or Reiki, it doesn't matter, whatever resonates with you. Physical touch has an immediate impact on boosting GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. Replenish with food. When you eat protein, whether it's animal protein or vegetable protein, it doesn't matter, it breaks down into amino acids, and amino acids are what replenish GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. When you eat healthy fats, particularly in the form of omega-3 fats like fish oil, flax seeds, or walnuts, those omega-3 fats are the raw materials that make your neurotransmitters. When you eat carbohydrates, specifically in the ideal form of vegetables and even more specific leafy green vegetables, they break down into B vitamins, and B vitamins are the precursors that make serotonin. When you replenish with food, you replenish your neurotransmitters. I, initiate movement. Any exercise will boost neurotransmitters. But Boston University did a study with yoga participants, and they had them do a 60-minute yoga class. And then when they measured their GABA after that class, they found everyone's GABA went up at least 27%. Some participants had a rise in GABA up to 80%. Compared to a control group that read a book for 60 minutes, there was no change in their GABA. One 60-minute yoga class can initiate a boost in all your neurotransmitters. But after we're active, we need to be still. Sitting in stillness allows the nervous system the opportunity to respond and adapt in our complex world that we live and work in a very nourishing way. And particularly sitting in stillness and silence, invoking a sacred prayer, meditation, or scripture can really feed and replenish your GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. H, harness your creativity. Dopamine loves the creative flow. And the way you get into a creative flow is to pick a single focused activity that ends in ing. Some examples are gardening, fishing, painting. But be careful, because there's some other activities that end in ing that make us feel like we get a dopamine hit. Drinking, smoking, overeating. Fishing, painting, the positive hobbies boost your dopamine. The other, drinking, smoking, overeating, depletes dopamine. Harness your creativity, but be very conscientious how you're doing that. As of today, it's been 1,054 days since I've had a drink of alcohol. But I didn't have a rock bottom moment that brought me to this point. And you don't need to have one either. From the outside looking in, my drinking did not look problematic. But from the inside looking out at the road I was traveling down, I knew the way I was drinking was a problem for me. But I'm not the only one making this decision. There are thousands of people in this country, in the UK, Australia, and Canada, who are rethinking their drinking and stopping drinking because they choose to, not because they have to. A whole paradigm is shifting, and we're upon a whole new wellness movement that's starting to go alcohol-free. But I'll be honest, there were two things I worried about when I stopped drinking. And the first was what would happen with my relationships. This one surprised me. The important relationships in my life not only stuck by me, but they deepened. And then I look back at all the new and wonderful people who have entered my life in the last 3 years. Some of them drink, some of them don't. But our relationship is not built on my personal decision to not drink. We've been able to connect and relate, and we're aligned in a way that is new for me. And it's been really, really nourishing to add these relationships to my life. The second thing that I worried about was, what if something awful happens? And it'll be so painful that I'll want to numb it with a glass or a bottle of wine. That worry came true. 18 months into not drinking, I hit my worst personal financial crisis of my life. If there was ever a time that I wanted to numb the experience and anesthetize the intense anxiety and fear that I felt, that was the time. But I didn't do it. And I believe the reason I got through that time without drinking wasn't because I had an intellectual understanding of the nervous system, which I do. But intellectualizing something isn't what gets me through something. And it wasn't because I have strong willpower, which I don't. My willpower fatigues as much as the next person. But what I had was very targeted and specific nourishment that I'd given my nervous system leading up to that point in a very new and different way. And that had given me a zone of resilience, an internal zone of resilience that I'd never had before. So whatever road you're on, wherever you are on that road with your own internal conversation, whether you're a healthcare practitioner like myself, a business professional in any industry, a stay-at-home parent, or anyone else, if you know in your bones that you're in the gray area with drinking or anything else as an attempt to regulate the anxiety in your body or the discomfort in your life, don't forget, your GABA, your serotonin, and your dopamine are waiting for you to activate them with certain foods, movements, and lifestyle practices. And when you do that, you're giving your nervous system the nourishment it's been craving all along. Thank you.